Hi, good evening. Welcome to Denver Water's virtual community meeting. Tonight we'll be focused on construction preparedness. Prior to beginning, I'd like to introduce our interpreter, Nicholas, who's going to invite residents over to our Spanish line. Nicholas?
Buenas tardes con todos y todas. Bienvenidos al evento de Denver Water. Estamos gustosos en darles la interpretación en español. Si quieren escuchar este evento en español, por favor, opriman asterisco 6. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. My name is Mickey Bain. I'll be your facilitator for this evening. You received an invitation to this call because your neighborhood is slated to receive service line replacements in 2023. Our goal is to prepare you for your lead service line replacement and give you an idea what to expect before, during, and after construction. If you're on the phone and you'd like to join the meeting online, you can go to denverwater.org. You will see a blue bar at the top of the screen. You can go ahead and click that link, and that will help you join this meeting. Our agenda for this evening, we're going to start with a high-level overview of the lead service line replacement process. Then we're going to get into the details of what to expect before, during, and after construction. We will have a lot of opportunities for you to ask questions. If you are on the phone, go ahead and press *3 to ask a question. And if you're joining us online, just go ahead and use the chat box. Some guidelines for this evening's meeting. We want to be respectful of the ideas of others. We're hoping to focus on the topic at hand and help us stay on the agenda. We're aware there's going to be a lot of questions about individual properties. We'll do our best to get to those, but I can guarantee you we're not going to get to all of them. Please do participate in our polls. We love the feedback. And again, we'd like to be able to answer as many questions as possible. So if you're joining us by phone, press *3 to ask a question, or you can use the comment box online. Joining me this evening are two presenters. We've got Pam Williams, Community Relations Senior Specialist with the Denver Water Lead Reduction Program, Communications Outreach and Education Team. And we have Ariana Salvador with the Government and Community Relations Team. So before we talk at you anymore, we want to get an idea of who's joining us this evening. So we're going to pull up our first poll question for the evening. This question is, which response best describes you? Press 1 for I own my home, 2 for I rent my home, or 3 for I own my home and additional properties that I rent out. So once again, the question will be, which response best describes you? 1, I own my home, 2, I rent my home, 3, I own my home and additional properties that I rent out. We've got some results coming in right now. Looks like the majority of us on here are homeowners, as well as some homeowners and some renters. So it's good to have a mix, and we'll discuss the topic in the lens for everybody. But now that we have a good idea of who's joining us on the call, I'd like to pass it over to my partner, Ariana, who'll give you an overview of customer-owned service lines. Ariana?
Thanks, Mickey. So water mains, water meters, service lines, it can all be really confusing. So the customer-owned lead service line is a pipe that brings the water from the Denver Water-owned main in the street to the plumbing inside of the home. So replacing these lines is the heart of the lead reduction program. These are the primary source of lead in drinking water. So we have a range of numbers because we don't own these service lines. So getting records of what they're made of is a lot harder. We've replaced over 20,000 lead service lines since the start of the program in 2020, which is great. There are two ways that your lead service line can be replaced by Denver Water: through the accelerated lead service line replacements made possible through the lead reduction program, or when discovered through regular routine maintenance, such as water main replacements. So prior to the lead reduction program, Denver Water had been replacing lead service lines over the last few years as they were discovered, again, during the routine courses of maintenance and working on our system. Lead service lines are also replaced as property owners choose to develop or redevelop their properties, and they replace their old service lines. So about 1,200 lead service lines were replaced every year through these efforts, indicating that it would just take several decades to replace all of the estimated lead service lines in Denver water service area. So through the lead reduction program, which again started in 2020, Denver Water is accelerating the pace of the replacing these customer-owned lead service lines at no direct cost to the customer. So rather than taking several decades to replace all of these lead service lines, we can get this done in a matter of 15 years. So with federal funding that we received at the end of last year, we're able to nearly double the amount of lead service lines that we replace in 2023. So that's further accelerating the rate of the program. So information on where Denver Water is going to be working in 2023 is displayed on an interactive map that's featured on our website. Customers can enter their address, and the map will show the work status and the name of the contractor, as well as the relevant dates as they become available. You can find this map by going to denverwater.org and searching for pipe replacement, or visiting denverwater.org/pipes directly. So 2024 work areas will be available for customers to view within the next couple of weeks. And now that you guys have an overview of what we mean by lead service line replacements, I will turn it over to my partner, Pam, who's going to walk you through the notification process and what to expect before construction.
Thanks, Ariana. I know that there's already some questions coming in, and we'll be able to address those shortly, but hopefully some of this information I'm about to go over and what the meat of our presentation will help answer some of those. So what you're looking at here with the arrow slide, if you're on the web and you can see this, what I'm going to walk you through is a step-by-step on what to expect leading up to construction and how you will ultimately schedule that service line replacement at your property that you own. So some properties will first receive a postcard, lets them know they'll be getting a water test kit in the mail. And we'll go over more about those tests on the next slide. So if we need you to complete that water test kit, we'll send you the kit a couple of weeks after the postcard. So that'll come in the mail, it'll come in a box at your doorstep. And just a quick note, not all customers will receive a lead test kit. It's really only directly for single family residences, and that's because of the nature of the sampling collection. There's a lot of specific things and steps you need to do there. And sometimes with larger multi-unit property or an apartment building, that can get really complicated and just with the sampling collection. And then the third step, when we identify your property for upcoming replacement, which are a lot of you in this call tonight, and you may have already received this piece of information, we'll mail the packet that includes the booklet that overviews the service line replacement process and the steps with all the pictures, and then the consent form as well, which is us asking the property owners for consent to do the work. And that consent form is very important, and you're going to hear us talk about it again in some upcoming slides. Now, after that, we'll be tracking you down to try to get that consent form signed if you haven't already. Life gets busy, and that's okay. We understand. So we're going to mail that a couple of times. If we don't get it the first time, you could do it online. And then when our crews mobilize in the area, they can also collect those in person. So if just something you accidentally misplaced or you've been meaning to get around to it, that's okay. We're going to give you some time to get that in. And then step 5, once you sign the consent form, that construction team will reach out to schedule an in-home consultation to talk about the replacement and any details specific to your property so that you are there walking lock and step with them to understand what's going to happen at my house, inside, outside, where are they going to be digging, what's going to happen to my plants or flowers, do I need to move them, when should I move them, what about inside of my house, do I need to move boxes? And we'll get into that a little bit as well later. And then step 6, after that in-home consultation, it'll be time to schedule the replacement. So there'll be more details on how that works. So there are a lot of steps that happen until the actual construction starts. So for anyone out there that's excited or maybe sent their foreman and they're waiting and ready to get their line scheduled, just rest assured, we're not going to leave you behind. And we definitely will be getting to that, and our crews will be getting those scheduled. So moving into our next slide, we're going to talk about what happens before we show up at your house. So we do some investigations. There are likely things that we've asked you to do, or you may start to see that I've mentioned a little bit before crews mobilize. So we conduct investigations of that water service line that Ariana was speaking about that goes from the street to your house underground, and we call that potholing, prior to replacement, to confirm whether or not there's lead there. So we want to make sure we're digging up a line that has lead, and no action is required by the customer for that potholing action. Crews will conduct utility markings and may put up no parking signs on the street as part of the work. I know that parking is precious, and I understand that. And so our crews really try to put those up with advance notice, move them as they move along with the work, and just knowing that the work may take a little time over weeks, months, but we won't be there forever. And then like I mentioned, we may also send that water test kit in the mail. Some things I'd like to point out: the test is free. It gives you directions inside that box. If you're online, you can see the brown box there. It comes in, and materials in there of how to collect those samples and return them for analysis. And we will also do that interior investigation, that in-home consultation. We're going to check the material of the line coming into your house as well. So I mentioned potholing. We're going to check it on the outside, and we're going to check it on the inside. And this is all before we're scheduling that replacement. And our next slide is going to get into more of those details about what happens during that in-home visit and consultation with the contractor I've been speaking about. So in order for us to move forward with your replacement, as I mentioned, we will need to gain your written consent, either mailed back in the form, online, or in person with our crews. To provide consent, Denver Water will send that form in the mail. You can also find the form on our website, denverwater.org/consent. And if you're not the homeowner, either on this call or maybe you're watching this later on and getting this information, please contact our customer care department with the name and contact information for your landlord or property owner. That will give us the information we need to get in touch with them so we can gain that consent. Their direct number, it should be there at the bottom of the screen. There it is. But it's 303-893-2444. As I mentioned before, there may be some time, could be weeks, between signing your form and hearing from us about next steps. So again, don't worry. We're sending those forms out months and weeks in advance. And the reason for that is gives us time to process the hundreds of forms that are coming in and prepare for the work. Our crews starting to prepare for the work, figure out which streets they'll be starting on, what pattern they're going to be doing the work in. So after we get that form, we'll do the in-home visit and property walkthrough. The construction team will reach out to schedule that, and they're going to be reaching out to the contact that's listed on that consent form. So really make sure that the best contact information's on there. If it's not yourself as the property owner, maybe you have an authorized representative or someone that will be meeting there at the property. And if your consent is gained in person during the door knocking, maybe you forgot, you meant to mail it in, but you're home when we get out there, they're going to probably just try to see if you have 20, 30 minutes or so to just do your in-home visit right then and there on the spot. And then safety and security is another thing I like to talk about here. And before we dive, into the details of that, providing a few comments about safety and security. So, Denver Water is aware, and I'm sure, anybody that's online or maybe on Nextdoor, social media, hearing news stories about utility impersonation. And we do recognize that letting a stranger into your home is not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of people out there knocking a door, maybe selling things. We do have a number of contractors doing replacements in addition to our own Denver Water crews. So online, you can see they're here, their logos. and they are listed on our website as well. For those that are on the phone, there are 4 different contractors that we're working with. They are AGL Construction, 5 Star Energy Services, KR Sword Figure, and Apex Plumbing. So if you see them in your area, maybe they come to your door, just want to provide a little familiarity for you as you start to see those crews come out. So one thing that we really encourage folks, if you're not comfortable and you're not sure what's going on your street, is this related to the lead reduction program and the work? Look for a Denver Water badge. Look for the logos of those contractors, the logos on their trucks. Our contractors should also be carrying a business card that has our information and phone number for Denver Water's customer care department. And you can call customer care and verify, there's someone at my door. They say they're with this company. Is this a legitimate visit to my home? Hopefully that's the case. But that really helps verify because, as I mentioned, there are impersonators out there and that is happening. And the last resource I will mention is you can also look yourself on that interactive map Ariana was speaking about earlier to identify what contractor is going to be in the area. You find your address, there's a polygon that'll be hovering over the work area. And when you click on that or hover over, it will give some information of who the contractor is. So as mentioned before the service line replacement, Denver Water or one of our contractors will meet you in the home for that inspection. We'll identify where the line enters into your property. Typically, it's in a basement or a crawl space. If you know we're coming, I would really encourage you to start clearing that out. It could be that maybe your Halloween decorations are in there and you need to take them out and get those set up just so they can have a clear path to get to that location. And they will also go over, as I mentioned, what will be impacted outside: trees, flowers, landscaping during the process. And they're going to also talk through what is their responsibility to put back as it is before the construction starts and what your responsibility will be as the property owner. And then once that in-home visit's completed, we'll work with you, the contractors will work with you to schedule that replacement. So on my next slide here, before I turn it back over to Mickey, this is talking about what happens after that form is signed. They met at your house, you did the walkthrough, now we're ready to get that line scheduled for replacement. So the contractors, as I mentioned, will reach out to the contact listed on the form and schedule that replacement a few weeks in advance. So people have busy lives and schedules. They're definitely going to find a time that works for you and a day where you can be home. Someone can be at the property all day long to make sure that we can get that set up. And each contractor we're working with, there's 4 different ones. They do each set up their schedules slightly different from one another, but you will receive that advance notice. And if your lead service line is being replaced as part of our routine maintenance, Denver Water crews, when they're replacing the main and the street, they're going to leave a door hanger with their contact information with our scheduling department, so you know who to call to schedule your replacement. So if you're someone that has received a door hanger on your front door telling you to call us to get that scheduled, it is a critical step to make sure you get that scheduled. And then one reminder is we need someone over the age of 18 to remain at the property during the full time of replacement. So keep that in mind when you're scheduling. Maybe you're not going to be home the whole day, but most of the day. I would really encourage you to find a day where you don't have any, major interruptions, where you're able to stay home, because the length of that replacement, that time can vary. It's anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And if anyone knows construction, that time can be on the longer end if we run into issues, or it could be short and sweet and quick. So we just want to make sure you're home. So at the end of the replacement, our crews can walk through with you and show you that things are finished, what they're coming back to take care of, what you'll need to take care of, making sure to flush your water at the end, and very, very important steps that Ariana will be getting into after the replacement. And I'm going to send it back over to Mickey to now get into some time for questions.
Yes, thank you both Ariana and Pam for a lovely overview on what customers can expect before construction. Just as a reminder, if you are on the phone, please press *3 to ask a question. And if you are joining us online, just utilize that chat box there. We are going to go to an online question from Adrian. And Adrian is wondering, is this work weather dependent? I'm going to pass that along to Ariana.
Yeah, great question, Mickey. Adrian, thank you for asking. So the short answer is yes. This is very much weather dependent because depending on the method that is used to replace the lead service line, some of these, for example, will be boring and that requires water, which if we're at freezing temperatures can really cause some issues while we're replacing the line. And just the conditions outside for all the equipment, the crews, the safety. So we prefer to have nice weather. And in addition to that, you have to keep in mind the restoration side of it, right? If we are doing things in the middle of the winter in a snowstorm on the back end when we go to perform restoration, that period where you wait is going to be a lot longer. So again, short answer is yes, it's very much weather dependent. We do have to have warmer temperatures in order for some of our methods of replacing these service lines to actually function and do it properly.
Thank you for that, Ariana. We do have a question that came in online. Is the consent form mandatory for the in-home visit to assess? The consent form is going to be mandatory for that in-home visit. As Pam mentioned, we will have workers and crews out doing some door knocking about a month prior. And if they are able to get in touch with you and sign the consent form, they will do their best with their availability and their scheduling to perform the in-home walkthrough with you then and there. Looks like we have a follow-up question in regards to multi-unit properties being rented out. What address would the test kits be sent to? Would that be the billing address? I'm going to send that over to Pam.
Thanks, Mickey. It's a good and complicated question. Depending on the size of the multi-unit, if it's a duplex, for example, we're going to try to send to both sides of the unit. If it's really anything larger than a duplex or a triplex, we're probably not automatically going to send that test kit because those sampling parameters can get complicated when there's multiple units in a building. The way water sampling works is that we don't want water being used for 8 hours prior to collection. And when you get in a large building or, more than a couple units, you're not sure what maybe the person on the other side of the wall is doing. There's one water service line feeding all of those units. So I would really encourage, anybody out there and who's asking this question that, we can and will test for multi-units. It's just something for those specific scenarios where you will have to request in from us, Denver Water. There's a certain type of test kit that we send is different. It's just not one that we'll send automatically. So to answer that question, where we're sending it, at the end of the day, whether it is a multi-unit property or a single family residence, we are sending those kits to the premise address where the sample needs to be collected from.
Great. And then we did have a question come in online whether customers and residents are allowed to verify contractors' ID cards. Pam, do you want to go ahead and take that one?
Sure. Short answer, yes, absolutely. You can ask for that. And we really encourage you to ask to see that identification. We do have Denver Water staff out there that are inspecting the work that our contractors are doing. So obviously they will have a Denver Water badge. Our contractors are going to have identification and maybe a badge or employee badge of their construction company. They're not technically Denver Water employees, so they would not have a Denver Water ID, but 100% I would encourage you to ask for their identification. And, if it is them and then we're there to do the work, but you're just still not sure and you're uncomfortable letting them in the door, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You can turn them away and wait to verify with us, with our customer care team. And then would you're comfortable letting our team know, okay, now I understand, can you send them back out? And we've had that happen from time to time, and that's okay. So yes, please ask for their identification if you would like to do so.
And again, on this topic, we kind of spoke about earlier how we're aware of utility scams. Just as a reminder for everyone on the phone, our contracting crews are going to be AGL Construction, 5-Star Energy Services, Apex Plumbing, KR Schwardinger, and of course, Denver Water Crews. All of those crews can be found online at denverwater.org/lead, so you can see their logos as well. denverwater.org/lead is a wonderful resource for everyone who's joining us here tonight. You can even sign your consent form online as well at denverwater.org/lead. We do have a few calls coming in over the phone, so we're going to go ahead and bring a caller on. It looks like we have Francesca. We're going to bring Francesca on with questions about her lead testing kit.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Francesca. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. So I turned in my testing kit and received a response that lead was not detected. So I'm wondering what the process is now, because I also received notice that that doesn't mean that my pipes might be not be replaced. So hoping to get an update. Thank you.
Pam, do you want to go ahead and cover that one?
Sure. Good question, Francesca. And this is a common one that does come up, so you're not alone. That is correct. The test alone is not an end-all be-all, if you will, of verifying if there's lead there. And I'm going to tell you why that is, and then what else we're going to want to verify. The reason for that is, when Denver Water, when we launched our program in the beginning of 2020, we also added we increased the pH of our water, how we're treating our water. So we've always treated our water. Water is naturally corrosive. And when the program launched, we increased that level of treatment. And what that pH does in the water is it provides a protective coating around the pipe internally and that line underground. So since we've launched the program in 2020, what we've seen, we had thousands of test results and hundreds before that. And we have numerous tests after. What we're seeing is that those levels of lead on those tests are going down, and because the pH is working and doing its job until we can replace and get those lines out. It is a layer of protection along with the pitchers and filters that everyone, on this call is getting and should be getting. And because of that, and we do have to report what we do on our program, so many metrics and reports to the Environmental Protection Agency and Colorado Department of Health and Environment. Part of that is really being sure there is no lead in a line before we remove someone fully from the program. So although the water test is a good indication and it's helpful, we also have to do that interior investigation to see, what does the pipe look like coming into the property? What is it made of? And completing those potholes outside between the main and the street and the meter in the house. And I can tell you that my experience, and even before the program started, there will be times that when we dig up the line or we do potholing, maybe there's pieces that are copper, which is the industry standard and what we're replacing with. And then we find a small little section where there's still lead. So the short answer is, water test won't do it alone. We will want and need those other pieces of investigation. So likely for your property, we still have you in the program and to receive pitchers and filters. And once we get to your house for replacement, we're going to conduct those other tests beforehand just to confirm if there's lead there or not. And if we find that there's not, we would not need to do a replacement, and then we could fully remove from the program. Hopefully that answer is helpful, and it's a very long-winded answer.
Well, thank you everyone for all of your questions. Really great questions, and we're going to have time coming up later in the presentation to answer some more. So again, we encourage you to ask those questions, *3 if you're on the phone or the chat box online. But now that we've covered the big picture details on what to expect leading up to the replacement, we'd like to provide more insight on what to expect during the actual service line replacement. Ariana, can you tell us more about what customers should expect during the service line replacement?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to share with you all a short video that provides a really good overview of what to expect during the lead service line replacement process. This is going to provide the details such as, when to move your car and what different techniques there are that we use to replace the lead service line. So, like in the first video, this has really great narrative. So for those of you that are on the phone, you'll get a really good understanding as well.
There are 3 important things you'll need to know on the day of your service line replacement. First, your water service will be turned off for up to 8 hours, so please plan accordingly. Second, the property owner or a designee who is 18 or older must be on site the entire time. Third, portions of your street will be closed from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., so you'll need to move your vehicles in the morning to give construction crews room to park. And remember, we may be doing several service line replacements on the same street, so construction equipment could be in your neighborhood for a few weeks. Service line replacement starts by using an excavator to dig a hole in the street. Crews will then use shovels to dig down to reach the water main. This is to locate where the old lead service line connects to the water main. You'll also dig a second hole around the water meter in your yard. This is another access point to reach the service line. Crews will then go inside your house. We'll use a side entrance or back door if possible, and put down a cover to protect the floor. The pull-through technique is a common method to replace a lead service line. This involves disconnecting the old service line from the water main in the street, and then inside your house, crews will detach the service line from where it connects to your home's plumbing. We'll then feed a cable through the old service line and attach it to a coil of new copper pipe. The next step involves using an excavator on the street. The machine pulls the cable and the old lead service line through the ground. The new copper service line gets pulled through with it. Then workers connect the new copper line to the water main. In the directional boring technique, the old lead service line is left in the ground and abandoned. Crews will disconnect it from the water main and your home's plumbing so it can no longer be used. We'll then bring in a boring machine and park it on the edge of the property. Workers use this machine to bore a hole for the new service line. The boring machine drills until it reaches a designated location in the basement or crawl space. Crews attach the new copper service line to the drill and pull it back through the hole. Workers then connect the new line to the water main. We'll check all new connections to make sure they're secure. These techniques avoid having to dig a trench through your yard. However, there are some rare cases when digging a trench is required. The final step of the replacement process involves connecting the new copper service line to your indoor plumbing, and then sending water through the new pipe to your home. If your water meter was located inside your house, it will most likely be moved outside during construction. This will make it easier for us to access in the future.
Perfect. So we are going to allow a little bit of extra time for our Spanish-speaking audience to catch up. So we'll give that a little bit of time. I do want to remind you guys that we'll have another Q&A session after this. So please, if you're on the phone, press *3 to submit your questions or in the chat box online.
And for those of you that are joining us via phone that are interested in that video, you can find it at denverwater.org/lead under lead service line replacement. So you can view that video in its entirety there.
All right. So now that we're all caught up, we're going to have some additional tips for you to help lead service line replacement day go as smoothly as possible. So we want to start with completing your morning routines, such as, showering, cooking, filling bottles or your pitchers, doing dishes, laundry, all of that stuff prior to your water shut off. Do not plan to use hot water, any ice makers, sprinkler system, or any water related appliances really during this outage. And we ask that you only turn on your cold water periodically to just check for running water. And so we understand construction can be really disruptive, and we all have really busy lives. I know Pam's touched on that, but it is really important that you do not leave the property during construction. So we need you to be home during this time so that we can address any issues that arise. And again, as Pam mentioned, complete our final walkthrough when the work is all finished. So I'm going to hand it back over to Pam to talk a little bit about what to expect after your service line replacement.
Thanks, Ariana. And I know there were a couple of questions that we didn't quite get to for the during. I'm just going to chime in on those really quick. So I know somebody had asked, how long exactly is the process, which I assume that means the day of. It's anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And the reason we give that range is, some service lines come out of the ground easily and they're not very stubborn and construction goes smoothly. The longer end is, construction is construction. Sometimes things don't always go perfectly as planned. So we give that range, but it is only the 1 day, 4 to 8 hours. And then the other piece, as we've been talking about, we have contractors doing work and Denver water crews. So Denver water crews, and there are folks on this phone, I know someone said, Denver Water's coming to do a main replacement on my street. Are they going to do any lead service lines too? The answer is yes. So as we complete routine maintenance work, updating our over 3,000 miles of pipe across our Denver water service area, streets uncovered, we're going to go ahead and get those lines if we see that they're lead. So short answer is yes, we are replacing lead service lines during main replacements as well. Okay, so what to expect after lead service line replacement? So after watching that video, you may be wondering or listening to it, how are we going to deal with a hole or two in your front yard? Well, we're going to take care of that. We really aim to minimize impacts. After the replacement's done, we're pouring dirt back into that hole in your yard and into the street, covering it up and covering up the new water meter. And we're going to make sure it's back at original surface level. And then a landscaping crew is going to come back if needed and do some additional restoration work. So that could be reseeding, resodding the grass, putting back the rock or mulch that was there before. If irrigation lines get impacted, those will also be repaired. It happens. It's easier right now. It's warm out and we're about to switch over where we're not going to be using our sprinkler systems anymore. But, when it's the warm weather time, we try to test those right after. Are there any, broken heads, some things that just sometimes can happen in construction? We're going to fix those. But if that happens over the winter time and for folks on this phone over these coming months, when you kick up your systems first time for the spring, reach out to us right away so we can help to get that taken care of. Again, the impacts are going to be discussed during that in-home visit. So if you do have landscaping or plants you want salvaged, we really recommend, and crews try to also remind, feel free to dig those up yourself for the day, move them to a temporary location, and they get them back in so that if you don't want to lose those. Any impacts to the interior of the home, such as drywall, flooring, that's going to be the responsibility of the homeowner to restore. Sometimes those pipes coming into the house where the service line's connected, it's not always in an open crawl space or open basement. Sometimes it's behind a drywalled in wall. Who knows what happened maybe prior to the house that you took over. So it's things like that, again, the crews are going to go through with you so that you fully understand that before starting construction. And then, as I mentioned, the street, That hole is going to, of course, be filled in. There's going to be a temporary patch so that the road is safe. And then a paving crew will come back later to do the permanent repair. I will say for folks on the phone, as we enter into colder season, sometimes those permanent patch repairs can take a little longer. As Ariana mentioned early, weather can be an impact not only for doing the actual replacements, but for those repairs and restoration as well. So just ask that you're a little patient with us and know that, we're really diligent in making sure our contractors are putting things back how they're supposed to and what we've asked them to do. It's just, especially for sidewalks, streets, sometimes those can take a little bit longer, needing warmer weather for some of that stuff. Now, on the next slide, we're going to talk about the important step of flushing your pipes after replacement. So when construction happens, it is possible for lead particles and other debris to get trapped in your plumbing, in your aerators. Think about your sink. If you're at home or wherever right now, walk on over or after this call, look under your faucet. It's like a little screen. It looks like a screen. That's your aerator. Things can get trapped in there. And that can lead to temporarily higher levels of lead and other plumbing issues if that is not flushed out. So it's really a must do to complete that flushing. Contractors are going to walk through that process with you. Maybe it's been the long 8-hour day and you're ready for it to be done. I understand. Really, really encourage you to take that 20, 30 minutes extra with the contractor. We're going to walk through and flush all of that out. It's so important for your own health, your family's health and safety, and also for, your fixtures and different appliances you have in your house. You may not see some of that particulate, but, just a little bit there can just really, that residual debris can really cause problems maybe in your sink when it just, maybe the water's not coming out or flowing as good as it could. And the next slide, we're going to look through what that flushing looks like a little more in detail. So crews will do an exterior flush on the pipes immediately following. They're going to flush the outdoor spigot, if you have one, and then doing that interior flush. So in total, like as I mentioned, it should take about 30 minutes. And then we also recommend for about a month afterwards, just do a brief, 3-5 minute flush. When the water hasn't been used for several hours. So maybe first thing in the morning or getting home from work or school, turn on a few faucets, give it a good flush and get that out of there. And then that aerator, that screen I mentioned, just even regularly cleaning that can just be so helpful over time because even minus lead, it can just collect debris and just is a good practice to do. And now I'm going to pass it over to Ariana to explain some more steps for after replacement.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Great explanation. So now moving in post-replacement, right? We want to avoid consuming any remaining lead particles. So please, please, please continue to use the water pitcher and filter that is provided by Denver Water for 6 months after your replacement. So about 4 months after your replacement, Denver Water will send you an offer letter for a free water test kit. This kit can show lead levels that have been reduced, but also the results can be helpful to identify any other sources of lead in, faucets, fixtures, or any other internal plumbing in the home. So we're going to go back to Mickey and he's going to open it up for a few more questions for you.
Thank you, Ariana and Pam. We've got a couple questions coming in about the consent form once again online. It looks like the general consensus is how much time between the consent form being signed and completed from when residents will be in touch with someone from a contracting crew or Denver Water. Pam, would you like to cover that?
Sure. It is a bit of time. Mickey and I, actually, this is near and dear to our hearts because we help send all of those out. It is about 2 months in advance before we're going to be mobilizing in an area that we start sending out those forms, and we send out the first consent mailing is what we call it. We give that about 3 weeks or so, 4 weeks, collect all those yeses or nos, whatever we're getting. And then any responses we haven't gotten, and we're sending out again. And that's about a month out from us being in the area. Then those next 4 weeks go by, and then that's when crews will start that door knocking, doing that potholing I talked about, the in-home consultations. And then it's another 6 weeks before the actual replacements begin. So it could be weeks before you're hearing. It's because we're collecting, we're sending out hundreds and hundreds at a time, in an entire neighborhood, and we're doing block after block. So I know the waiting game is not fun, and I know so many people are excited and so anxious to have the work done. So just know that it is normal to feel like you're waiting for some time, because we do send those out a couple of months in advance.
Yes, all the information will be found via mail. We do our best to keep the USPS in business and running, so we will be sending plenty of things to you via snail mail. You can always contact our customer care line if you have any questions. And again, our website, denverwater.org/lead, is a wonderful resource. We've got a question over the phone from David. David, I'm going to bring you on the line. Hi, David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, so I have an older house. It's a rental. I have a wonderful tenant, but the house itself was built probably in the early 50s, and the crawl space underneath of this house is only accessible by the outside through an access hatchway that you crawl down through. Has this type of an installation proven to be a real challenge, or something that has kept the installation from being able to take place? Because I have had to replace a furnace down there, and I will tell you, it was not pleasant, and most of the work was done laying on your side. So I don't honestly know where the water line comes in at this property. It could be very well back into the back underneath. I kind of suspect it to be there, since that's where the sink and the kitchens and the bathrooms and the washer dryer is, which is going to require probably a fairly small person to be able to get back to it. Has that been a problem in the past?
Thank you, David. Pam, do you want to provide some insight in that?
Sure. Yeah, there's some tricky situations, and this doesn't surprise me. What I will say is, I feel fairly certain they can get to it. I'm not out there doing the replacements myself, but, from what I hear from crews is, they're having to crawl on their stomach or their side, and they're getting into some crazy locations. But, kind of our crews and our own motto internally is no lead left behind. So they're really going to try any and everything possible to, number one, locate where that line is. Like you said, you think it's maybe down there. And then finding the best way to access it and making that connection and getting that out. So, I would say don't be too discouraged. When they come out there, you'll be showing them where that is, how to get in there. And you guys will be working through that together. So I feel confident that they should and would be able to do that. And, when things get tough, the teams really get creative. These folks have been doing this now for years for us. These construction companies have been around for a while. So, they have really run the gamut and seen that. So, like I said, really good time to make sure you're there. I would really encourage you. I think you said it's a rental property. Obviously, you'll be working with your tenant to make sure what day and time to get over, so you guys can all look at it together so they can understand that access point.
Yes, plenty of tricky situations have been encountered, and we do our best to accommodate all of those. We do have another caller, Luis, who's got a question about some crews working in the area. Luis, I just brought you online. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Basically, there were some crews working a couple of blocks down, and they disappeared. All the equipment disappeared, and nobody came to knock at my house. The house is rented, but the lady works from home, and she's there all the time. So I'm trying to figure out what's happening.
Yes, that's a great question. I'm going to let Pam cover that because we do work on certain properties and neighborhoods, and she'll give some more insight into that.
The first thing I would say, and you probably heard me mention, Elise, we don't want to leave any lead behind. So if we think your property does, have lead there, unless we have confirmed for some other reason via test or potholing that it's not there, we are going to try to make that connection. So it could be a couple of things. It could be that maybe we were potholing, we're at those beginning stages. We talked about the investigation where we just need to check the material. We don't need any customer interaction just yet. And maybe they're not at the point where they need to do the in-home visit or door knock, especially if you did get a consent form from us and you've signed it and turned it in. They could just be at the point where they're not scheduling yet and they don't need to come to your door. But maybe, your tenant or you saw them on the street because they are doing that pre-work, that investigative work. My best suggestion would be for you, without knowing your address, and definitely don't want you to be sharing that over the phone, but contact our customer care department. You can either call, it's 303-893-2444, or email them. And then you can provide your specific address so they can see exactly what work area you're in, who the contractor is, and what, timeline they are with the work. Are they just doing that potholing? Will they be coming back? Did we get your consent form? And I think they'll be able to give you a lot more specific information directly related to your property. But those would be my guesses if I, just kind of understanding the way the work goes.
Thank you so much for that, Pam. Yes, no lead left behind. That is a good reminder. That is kind of a core tenet of this whole project. Speaking of kind of core tenets or programs that involve the lead reduction program, we have a question from Eve online. Eve says, we are getting pictures and filters. Does that mean we're included? Ariana, do you want to go ahead and cover that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Eve. Thank you. So the answer is yes. If you receive a pitcher and a filter from Denver Water, you are enrolled in the program. You should be receiving some type of letter or communication when we come to you. Another way that you're able to confirm whether or not you are enrolled in the lead reduction program is by visiting denverwater.org/pipes. And that is where you will find, again, that interactive map where you can type in your address and it should give you information on whether, you're suspected to have lead, it's confirmed or not. So you can get some more information on there as well if you're ever not sure on whether you're enrolled in the program or not.
Great, thank you. And yes, if you are receiving those pictures, please remember cooking, drinking, and preparing infant formula. And Denver Water will be sending you a new filter every 6 months. A couple questions have come in online of what Denver Water covers when doing pothole and replacement work. Pam, do you want to go over that real quickly?
Sure. And I think maybe it looks like it was a question about cost potentially too. So Denver Water is conducting this program at no direct cost to the homeowner. So, when you sign the consent form, you're not also needing to write a check or make a payment. So the replacement work is being completed at no cost. It's part of, our larger capital costs of doing programs within Denver Water. And then same for the potholing. That is all rolled up in there. So, we're going to be covering doing that in-home inspection, doing the actual construction work, putting the restoration back outside, filling the hole. The one thing or couple things that I mentioned where homeowners or property owners may need to be following up or doing something or potential cost related is, if it's a piece of drywall that maybe we need to cut out to get to the pipe, the homeowner is responsible for getting that drywall back or putting that piece of, maybe it's a floor in the basement, piece of tile or something, just depending on where the line comes through. So that would be the responsibility there. And I'm hoping that maybe answers the question.
I do think you did a great job covering it. Again, the idea is it's no cost to customers, and we are going to do our best to leave it as we found it. But now that we've covered the big picture details of the lead service line replacement, start to finish, we've answered some questions about it. We'd like to cover some action steps and what's next. And I'm going to pass that over to Ariana to preview those.
Great. Thanks, Mickey. So just to recap and highlight what we talked about here today and the biggest action items for next steps, I should say, for this are going to be completing the water test kit if you receive one before your replacement. And after your replacement, please watch the offer letter to do a post-replacement water test. That is very important. Another thing to note is, as the property owner, we need you to sign and return the consent form so that we can move forward with the replacement of the lead service line. Again, if you want to mail it to us, that is great. If you would like to do it online, that is also an option if you visit denverwater.org/consent and fill out all the information there. As a tenant or renter, you should reach out to your landlord or the property owner so that we can make sure that they are engaged with us so that we can move forward with this replacement process. Keep in mind, we cannot do that without the property owner's signed consent. We also ask that you continue using the filter for added protection. I know we touched on the 6 months. Please continue to do that. And there could be residual lead particles in the plumbing after a replacement. So this is why we really emphasize this. So in addition to that, we encourage you to sign up for our email updates by visiting denverwater.org/lead. And you can reach out to us via email. It's lead@denverwater.org, or you can reach us via phone call. The phone number is 303-893-2444 for any additional questions that you guys may have. If you have a neighbor or a friend that doesn't, speak English, please encourage them to reach out to us. We have a lot of support to provide information about the lead reduction program in many other languages. So we're eager to support everyone's participation in the program. And as a part of this effort, the lead reduction program website is also available in both English and Spanish. So we thank you all for your time this evening, and we really look forward to working with you to replace your lead service line. And we hope that you guys have a really great night.